Our school, Michaelnagar Shikshaniketan, government-sponsored co-ed English medium higher secondary, has taken an excellent initiative in conducting online classes through YouTube channel. Even in this pandemic situation, our school did not step aback in providing and enhancing knowledge to the students. So, it's a request to the viewers, please like, comment and subscribe.
So today we are going to start a very new chapter, that is the last chapter of our syllabus, that is environment and its resources and its conservation. Okay. So in this particular part, it is the very first part of the chapter, it's part A or section A, which is the nitrogen cycle. Okay. So nitrogen cycle, there are different types of biogeochemical cycles which are going on in our environment simultaneously. What is nitrogen cycle? Actually different kinds of biogeochemical cycles, they generally mean the movement of this particular nutrient along the different stratas of our environment. So that is basically a biogeochemical cycle. So in this part, in the nitrogen cycle, we are going to discuss about the movement of the nitrogen in either in its whether in its atmospheric form or in its nitrate or nitrite forms, that we are going to disclose very soon. So it basically means the movement of nitrogen along the different stratas of the environment, and then again this particular process is in the process of a cycle. That is why it is known as a nitrogen cycle. I will give you details. First we should know why is nitrogen important in our environment. This is very important because unless and until one nutrient is important, then we cannot talk about its movement, right. So the very first thing, that is, it is a primary nutrient for survival. Why? Because we know that basically DNAs, proteins and chlorophylls, these are very rich in nitrogen. So nitrogen is definitely important for our body, not only in animals but also in plants and everywhere else. So it is a primary nutrient for survival, which is required for our survival. Next we are coming to the point, but it is inaccessible. Now you may say that there is a huge amount of nitrogen present in our environment, but still why am I saying that this nutrient is very inaccessible? This is very inaccessible because the way the nitrogen is present in our environment is not accessible to either of our living organisms, whether we are talking about plants or whether we are talking of animals. That is, in our atmosphere nitrogen is present as N2 gas, right. It is a gas which is present in our environment. Now this gaseous form of this particular nutrient is not accessible to either plants or animals. So that is what we are calling it inaccessible. So in order to make it accessible for us and the plants, we need to convert this nitrogen gas into different forms. Okay. So that is what we are talking. So actually nitrogen basically at least needs to be converted to NH3 or ammonia. It has to be converted to ammonia in order for it to be accessible or get inside the body of plants or animals. So besides nitrogen gas and ammonia, it is also available in the environment. In what forms? They are available in our environment in the forms of different nitrates and nitrites. Okay. Now what is happening? The thing which I told you, these inaccessible form, that is the nitrogen gas form of the particular nutrient, is converted to accessible forms through different methods. What are those methods? The methods are nitrogen fixation, ammonification, nitration and denitrification. Now this entire, so this is the basic, or this is why these are the basics of nitrogen cycle. Now we are getting into the details and we will talk about each of this process in details. Now nitrogen cycle basically involves 4 stages. Okay, or we can say the nitrogen fixation, it depends on 4 different stages. The first process is known as the nitrogen fixation, where the nitrogen from the atmosphere is fixated by, there are different types of organisms who do it. Next is ammonification, where it is converted to ammonia. Then we are coming to nitrification and denitrification, where the different types of nitrates and nitrite forms are released. So now we are coming to the very first stage, that is known as the nitrogen fixation. Now what is nitrogen fixation? I told you that nitrogen fixation is a process by which the nitrogen in its absolute inaccessible form is converted to the accessible form for the primary producers or for the plants. So what is nitrogen fixation? It is the process of the conversion of the inaccessible nitrogen into accessible forms. These are mostly done by prokaryotes, that means mostly bacteria. We are going to get into the details, you will understand. And what is given over here? I have just given over here a short tidbit, that is nitrogen is normally a very stable compound, okay? It has triple bonds with each other. So it is very difficult to break that particular, break those particular bonds. So which requires a lot of energy, and this energy is provided by the ATP molecules. And what is happening in this process? In this process basically nitrogen is getting converted to ammonia, okay, and it is mostly done by the different kinds of bacteria. Now nitrogen fixation can be of three methods, or it can be done, or it is possible in the environment with the help of three different types of processes. Now what are those processes? The first process is a natural one, the second one is a biological one, and the last one is the industrial one, which is the artificial part obviously. What happens in the natural form? What is happening in the natural process of nitrogen fixation? It is basically, the nitrogen is basically converted into nitrous oxides and its different kinds of oxides through lightning, thunder at lightning, that is happening during the rainfall. So nitrogen is converted to its oxides due to lightning flash, which comes down in the soil with the help of rainwater. So that rainwater brings those nitrous and nitric oxides inside the soil, okay. Next we are coming to the biological fixation of nitrogen. How is it happening? It is happening with the help of the different types of bacteria, which I told you. It is happening due to the bacteria and the different kinds of cyanobacteria. These bacteria basically have a specific enzyme which is known as nitrogenase, and this nitrogenase obviously acting in case of in absence of oxygen, that means it only occurs in case of anaerobic conditions. And two different types of minerals are required for this. One is iron and the other is molybdenum. So these two different types of minerals are definitely needed for this process to continue. So that is the biological fixation of nitrogen. And when we are coming to the industrial fixation or industrial formation of ammonia, how does it happen? It happens, we know, you have definitely learned this in your chemistry, that nitrogen and hydrogen are basically combined together to form ammonia, and this particular reaction takes place in the presence of a specific type of catalyst, which is magnetite or Fe3O4, and it takes place under very high temperatures and pressures. So under this condition you can definitely prepare ammonia in the laboratory. So this is all about nitrogen fixations. Now we are going to learn about the different types of nitrogen fixers. Now we are talking about the different types of nitrogen fixers. That means the different types of microorganisms which help in the fixation of nitrogen. So nitrogen fixers can be basically of two types. One is free living, that is they can live alone and they do not require any kind of thing. And the other one is symbiotic, which cannot live on their own, but they require certain hosts in which they will remain. So the free living bacteria, they can be of two types. The free living nitrogen fixers, they can be of two types. One is cyanobacteria and the other is normal bacteria. So cyanobacteria, examples very important, these examples I have given, these examples are very important. Examples of some nitrogen fixing cyanobacteria are nostoc and anabina, whereas some normal bacteria, they are clostridium and azotobacters. Whereas in case of symbiotic ones, they are of two types, leguminous bacteria and non-leguminous bacteria. That means these, here what happens in case of symbiotic nitrogen fixation, we see that there are certain bacteria which get into a give and take policy. We know what is symbiosis, right, where both the organisms, they involve in some kind of deal, you can say, some kind of deal where one organism is allowing the other something, in return it is taking something from that. So in case both the organisms, they are benefiting from this kind of relationship. So here in case of leguminous bacteria, or we can say in case of leguminous plants, that is rhizobium, which involves into in a symbiotic relationship with leguminous plants, and a non-leguminous one is Frankia, which takes place its symbiotic relationship with Alnus. Next we are coming to, after nitrogen fixation, we are coming to the next stage of this process, that is the ammonification. Now what is ammonification? Ammonification is basically the conversion of these complex nitrogenous compounds present in the dead animals and plants into the simpler ammonium ions. Okay. So the very complex nitrogenous forms of dead plants and animals, they are converted to ammonium ions, and these ammonium ions, when they reach the soil, that means they are dead, that means they are present in the soil. So when these particular ammonium ions, they reach the soil, it increases their fertility of the soil. Okay. So that is very important. That is, there are some bacteria, when after they die they decompose. So when these ammonifying bacteria they come and they decompose that particular dead body of that particular organism, then certain ammonium ions are released, which actually seep into the soil. Now I have given an example of a bacteria, that is Bacillus ramosus. Next we are going to learn about nitrification. We have come to the third stage of the process, that is nitrification. Now what is nitrification? It is the conversion of the ammonium ions into nitrites and then into its nitrates. So what is happening in case of nitrification? In the process of nitrification, certain bacteria, they convert the ammonium ion that was released in the last part, is now converted to nitrites, and then a different set of bacteria then convert these nitrites into nitrate forms. So this is nitration. Now the very first process where nitrites, from ammonia to nitrites is formed, that process is known as nitritation. And this nitritation, see I have written from ammonia to nitrites. So this is known as nitritation, and this nitritation process is taking place. There are many bacteria, I have given one example, Nitrosomonas. Next, the next part where these nitrites are going to get converted to nitrates. So this process is known as nitratation, which is done by another set of bacteria which are known as the nitrobacters. So this is all about nitration. Now what will happen to these nitrates? Now these nitrates have reached the soil. These nitrates, they reach the soil. Now when they reach the soil, then again there are separate set of bacteria who are going to convert these nitrates back into the atmospheric nitrogen. That is in case of into nitrogen gases. This process is known as denitrification. So what is denitrification? Denitrification is the process which involves the reduction of soil nitrates. Now these soil nitrates, they are reduced to nitrogen gas, and these are done by separate bacteria. For examples, I have given Pseudomonas and Thiobacillus. So these are the different types of bacteria which we find can convert these nitrates back into its, that is nitrates are converted back into its gaseous form, and thus this cycle is repeated once more. And in this way the entire nitrogen cycle process is taking place. So now we have come to the end of this part of the topic. I hope this video will be enough for you to understand, and remember that part which I have given, the examples of the different types of nitrogen fixers is very important, where I have given you the names of different free living bacteria and the symbiotic bacteria. They are very important, and these parts they are also very important. Now, some questions come like name one nitrifying bacteria, name one denitrifying bacteria, name one ammonifying bacteria. This kind of questions they come every year in Madhyamik. So these are very important. Okay, so that's it. On the next video we will continue the next part.
Subscribe. Click on the bell. Like, comment, share.